time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
This community of care is created through our work and time together, our commitment to one another. This is our covenant, to walk together in loving fellowship, to share our hopes and values. As we pass these baskets, we thank you for the generous gifts which support the work of this religious community and Unitarian Universalism in the world at large. With hearts of gratitude, we will now receive today's offering. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to its life, we affirm our lives within it. Let's do it without the music today. From you. And now, in your gray hymnal number 318, we will sing together, "We Will Be One." So, Memorial Day is a way that we as a country have formalized a day to honor the men and women in our armed services who have fallen in the line of duty. And I don't come from a military family, and I have not served in the armed forces, and so every year on both Memorial Day and Veterans Day, I'm aware that perhaps I'm not the right person to be up here speaking, but here I am, and sometimes it's people that are a little more removed from the emotionality and the experience that sometimes can speak. And so my hope today is that my words will simply hold space for all of us to be in relationship with what Memorial Day means to all of you in your own way. whether you are a veteran who returned, knowing that some of your comrades did not, are a family member of a loved one who did not return, or a citizen of this country who recognizes that men and women have died in service to this country. I also am aware that Veterans Day and Memorial Day are not the same thing. So when I talk about Veterans today, I do want to acknowledge that today is about recognizing those who did not come home. But I also want to hold the space for those in our congregation who did. So when I think about Memorial Day, I think it's a very sacred to me. It's a very sacred weekend, even though our culture has sort of turned it into a day for barbecuing. But it also, on the Sunday of Memorial Day at least, I like us to spend a little time to be a little more reflective about who we are as a nation, what we stand for, what we're willing to fight for, and what we're willing to die for. And so when I think about Memorial Day in its largest, broadest, highest sense, the words that come to me are the words strength, courage, dignity, honor, wisdom. And when we look veterans in the eye and say thank you for your service, this is what I'm expressing and what I'm visualizing when I express those words of gratitude. And for many people, these traits are what the American flag represents, the best of what we as Americans aspire to be as individual human beings and as a nation. And so there is great honor in representing the United States flag in that capacity. And as we've been told through the years from the words of our own veterans in the congregation, Phil Ellsworth and Richard Highland, with their powerful sermons throughout the years, we know that oftentimes, or maybe not oftentimes, all times, wars become romanticized while the lived experience of serving is far from that idealized image that media and Hollywood sometimes would like to portray. And so today, what do we do when the ideal potential lived expression meets that alternate reality that counters the above-named qualities? What do we do with the reality of the violence and the harm and the trauma done by war? Do we simply become disillusioned and take down our American flag? Do we do what we've done in the past during Vietnam and look at returning veterans and soldiers and say, you guys are a shame and a joke, and spit on them, creating in them even more trauma and moral injury than they were already returning home with? Do we stick our heads in the mud and continue to wave the flag in blind oblivion to how our flag is received to many people across the world? Or do we stick it on the back of our truck and parade up and down North Avenue as a symbol of I'm not sure what? What do we do with the fact that our lived experience is never, ever, in reality, the idealized version we play out in our heads? And how do we weave that ideal version of what we'd like it to be and the lived experience of what it really is together into a dignified, comprehensive whole? I invite us to sit with this tension today, because I want to be able to look our veterans in the eye and say thank you. We see you. We see the whole of you. We see the dignity, the honor, the strength, the courage, and the wounds, the fears, the traumas, and the physical, psychological, and moral injuries that also accompany service in the armed forces. Sometimes when we look at the big picture and we begin to notice things that are not working as a system, we lose the capacity to acknowledge the real-life human beings within the system itself. The individual men and women who are still sacrificing their lives, their health, their limbs in our name. And when we lose the capacity to recognize them, we lose a little bit of ourselves. And so we live in a day and age where we as a country are working to reconcile this dichotomy. We're trying to reconcile the dignity of the veteran with the cruelty of the system. And occasionally, the two blend into one another, and we're no longer able to distinguish between them. And that's when real harm is done. That is when moral injury occurs. And so, as we mature as a nation, I believe that we are being called to see, acknowledge, and embrace all of it without needing to romanticize it to the point of being unrealistic or to demonize it beyond recognition. And so as we remember and honor those who did not come home on behalf of their service to the country, and we recognize those who did make it home in body, but came home changed, on this Memorial Day weekend, I invite us to lift up the whole human being. The dignity, the grace, the strength, the wisdom, and the wounds, the scars, the pain, the injury, the brokenness that some return home with. Until we embrace it all, we will be a shallow and hollow depiction of what we as a society can truly be. I told this story last year or a few years ago, but one of the chaplain students that went through our program a few years ago was putting himself through the chaplaincy program and supporting his family. So he had just moved here from Puerto Rico. He barely spoke any English when he came, but he really wanted to be a chaplain. And he was working as a CNA in the veterans facility in Glenwood. And one of the most powerful pastoral conversations he had was with an old World War II veteran who just wanted a glass of milk at 3 a.m. This old man couldn't sleep, and afraid in his kindness wheeled him down to the kitchen and sat with him while he drank his milk. And while he drank this milk at 3 a.m., his story poured out. The story poured out not to a therapist, not to a minister, but to a CNA who simply showed compassion, poured him a glass of milk, and quietly held space at 3 a.m. for a buried story to surface. A story that had never been shared, even to his beloved family. And I believe that healing occurred that night because one human being held space for another human being to tell their story. Every veteran has had their own experience while serving, while returning, and the life they've lived before they served, and the life they lived and are living after they have served. For some, the time in service colored everything that they've done afterwards. For others, it was a time in their life, they returned home, and they've moved on. And so with that in mind, I often think about Phil's poem. How many times in life have we been extended grace and we don't even realize it? How many times in life has the kindness or the higher decision of a complete stranger changed our lives in a fundamental way, and we never knew? Likewise, how many times, perhaps, has a random act of kindness of our own impacted and or changed somebody else's life in a way that we never knew? Our veterans know these realities of war better than the rest of us, and they bring these truths home with them in their hearts. There are stories that they don't always express to their loved ones when they come home, because how do you express some of those experiences with mere words? How do you express that internal emotion, lived experience, or the knowing that you have been deeply wounded, or you may have caused harm in a way that is hard to reconcile with who you are when you're at home as a civilian? Over the years, I've had people tell me, I don't want to be thanked for my service because I don't deserve it. What I did wasn't honorable or noble, so please don't thank me for that. And yet, I've also had people say, sometimes all I need when I'm having a rough day is somebody to look me in the eye, see me, and say thank you for your service. So once again, it's a both and. There is no right way to come home from war. There is no one way to support somebody that has come home from war. And there's no right or wrong way to move through the grief when somebody that we love doesn't or didn't come home from war. And so we do the best that we can. And every year, like I said, on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, we remember, we honor, we slow down, we reflect. Sometimes we decide that we need to cry. And sometimes what some of these veterans and families need is a day to laugh and barbecue and be with family and friends, because that is part of being fully human too, and that is part of the healing process, to come back home, be reintegrated, and have what we might consider a bit of a normal life. So once again, it's a both and, not an either or. So this morning, for those of you who have been in the military and have served, I say thank you. Thank you for your service. For those family members who are holding space for a loved one who didn't come home. We say, we honor you, we sit with you, we grieve with you. You do not move through this alone. And for those who have come home changed, we say, we see you, and we thank you, and we're here for you. And with that, I think the best way to close out a sacred day like this is with some beautiful sacred music. And so Miriam is going to sing Danny Boy for us.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. It's you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow, and I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. But when ye come and all the flowers are dying, and I am dead as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me. And I shall hear, though soft you tread above me, and oh, my grave will warmer, sweeter be. For you will bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.